Hello and welcome once again to the 2 Minute Warning. I'm your host, Perry Busby. The 2 Minute Warning is brought to you by the West Side Gazette newspaper, uh, one of South Florida's oldest African American owned newspaper that has been serving Broward, the Miami-Dade, and Palm Beach County areas since 1971. And we are beholden to them for helping to tell our stories for these 51 years. And joining me tonight is my co-host and my other co-host, Mr. Bobby Henry and Mr. David Wright. So good to see you, my brothers.
Well, it's good to be seen as well. I'm terrific and getting better, and especially when I can be in the company of you two guys. So I expect us to have a pretty good show tonight. David?
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure just to be here, and an honor. And Brother Perry, we are just glad to see you in the driver's seat tonight, and looking forward to a great show.
Yeah, man, I know we've enjoyed the holidays and sort of took a rest, and but that hasn't stopped news, and so I'm not in the Broward area, but I'm still in Florida, and so uh, just for a minute, let's bring everyone up to date about what's going on. What's the latest in Broward, and what are we hearing in this state that has changed dramatically? I mean, since we've last met uh, with the elections. Bobby, where you want to start?
I what they say, SSDD, same stuff, different day.
Yeah.
And we do understand that we are in an uphill battle when it comes to gaining our foothold or our toehold in this political arena. There's still so much happening, uh, and I'm just going to just touch briefly on this. I've always said, as long as I was old enough to realize what the Brown versus the Board of Speaker Kansas was all about, that uh, the last remaining opportunity for anybody to keep a person of color down would be in the educational arena. And we got so much stuff going on, it begs one to understand just what is really happening with the stupidity of a Herschel Walker and the corrupt dysfunctioning of a Broward County school system. I think that statement I made holds well. So that's my point. I'm going to go all the way into that.
And those are two of the hottest topics that's going on. Georgia, again, is the spotlight right now. Even though the Democrats may have some type of position in the Senate, it's important that they gain that extra seat. It makes it a lot more easy to get things done locally. We just have to stay engaged, keep that watchful eye on everything that's going on, and continue to hold these politicians, so-called politicians.
Yeah. And I would dare say I think that is hopefully the message that is now gaining some speed. And once again, I do think that we um somehow need to uh, understand within both of these parties the issues of what is plaguing our communities and the lack of response that is real and perceived. I mean, there are some things that I know are happening, but we aren't talking about it, and so How can you say we're doing something when we aren't making people aware of that and they aren't seeing it and it isn't being evidenced? As well as, I just think that we have to uh it having these dysfunctional parties is detrimental to us. I mean, because I would dare say if Senator Warnock was not the candidate, I doubt if Georgia would have put up a Herschel Walker.
Mm.
And so what is the message that they're saying? That we can't choose the difference. And so these are some of the things, like I say, some of the tricks, and the fact that and the fact that, and I'll get even out of race and say the fact that we're even at a point where people are questioning someone who has a lack of ability and is downright foolish to be a leader.
Yeah. With that whole scenario, this whole what do you want to call this thing? This whole circus. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, is getting there. But
yeah.
but we have some, I think, some much more serious issues
Hmm.
here at hand for us to deal with, and obviously we
Right.
don't need more than a
Yeah.
Hershey bar. I'm sorry, what is it? Not a Hershey bar. What is it? Hershey. Okay.
Yeah.
But again, guys, this is a serious issue.
Yeah.
We just have to
Right.
get away
Yeah.
from games that are being played to even have us even in this moment talking about such things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the hurtful part about this being pinned against each other in this circus.
Mm.
Right.
And I think going forward, we have to think be more strategic to avoid these type of pitfalls or possible
Right.
pitfalls.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, if they didn't have all that bad air over there in China, open up against our good air.
Is that what you think?
Yeah. Yeah. But uh but I mean, as we talk about these issues, one issue that we know, um that began to um strike America at its core, in its origins, was really, and I remember those times back in the 80s, and the beginning of the AIDS and the HIV epidemic. Uh, uh, and we must applaud government, because that was in one sense where government really, work with science to help produce something. But once again, we can also look at government and see how disproportionately their response has impacted our communities. And
Yeah, I'm
again, these are the politics.
I'm glad you brought that back full circle.
Right.
Yeah. What, 1988 when World
Yeah.
AIDS became
1988, 34 years ago.
34 years ago. So
Yeah.
you said that period. The focus was on white gay men. That was the focus. And again, we were caught up in that whirlpool, and nobody was trying to throw us any kind of a line to help us out. It was more again, but that was then. That was 30. That was that time
Yeah.
then, and here we are now.
Yeah.
How much
Yeah.
has things
Yeah.
changed,
Mhm.
if any?
Yeah. I mean, if we go back and even look at that, even when it was the gay community, there was some dismissiveness. And then when it became evident that, it wasn't just this one particular segment, I mean, Ryan White was what became a perfect example
Mhm.
and was very significant to the cause that this also, I mean, and so we look at this, and again, these are the structures that I think that we have to begin to constantly be aware of and understand that they exist. Because
Yeah.
when it was gay, it really wasn't anything, and then it became the Rock Hudson.
Liberace.
Right. And so it took on a different tone.
Yeah. And there were those of us that we knew people who got blood transfusions. No fault of their own. They were car accidents.
Right.
And next thing you know, they're positive. So
Right.
and society it kind of stigmatized it, as you guys said, and then turned a blind eye to it when it reached certain communities, in my opinion.
Okay.
Right.
And it took a while to recover. And then with the with the shaming of it, it just made it even harder to identify with and get support for.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're having this conversation today because we want to find out where we are.
Exactly, and we have some guests who are firsthand dealing with this and trying to assess and address situations concerning HIV and AIDS. We got two guests. Our first two guests. I'm just Ari. Can you put that book cover up? And then we'll let you guys do an introduction. Okay. Do we have the book cover? Okay. Okay. Let's see if I can do this. If I can show this. Okay. The authors of this book. I don't know if you can see it. But they are two of our guests, and the name of the book is "Life at the End of the Tunnel." Can you get it? Where are you going at? Here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. You got it? Okay. All right. Okay. Dave, you want to bring on your cousin?
Yeah, I sure do. It's something in a name, especially when the last name is right. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce my newly found cousin, Brother Melvin, right to the show. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his story. Brother Melvin, are you with us?
Yes. How you guys doing today?
We're well.
Good evening. Good to see you.
Oh, well.
Coming back
Good
from
to see you too. Yes, sir. I had a good time. You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. We hear you.
Okay. I had a good time. You want to hear my story? What you saying?
Just a little bit, Melvin. Give us a little bit, then we're gonna bring in another guest, and then we're gonna get it all together. So
Okay.
give us just a little bit.
Okay, my story started when my sister passed away from HIV AIDS, tracked it from a guy that came out of prison. So I took that pain and turned it into passion. And my journey began.
Okay. We got a little surprise for you. Ari, can you show a little part of that video?
The reason it changed my life because one was my best friend, that was my father. I do not know that he knew that he had AIDS because he did not talk about it. But another way it changed my life because of my sister. This guy got out of prison and he infected my sister. He did not tell her, and that affected my life. So for myself, I took it upon myself to do work in the community for HIV and AIDS.
Years ago, Melvin, you remember that?
Yes, sir. My motto is we are in the fight together.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Who we got next, Perry?
You guys didn't give me that, so you had to tell me that.
Okay.
Is that Dr. Sandra?
By that, our next
Right.
guest, she has a very incredible story herself. aside from being an author, she's a motivator. She's working on her doctoral now. She took the time from writing her dissertation to join us tonight, and that is Dr. Sandra Marie Anderson. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Good evening.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Sam.
Oh my
Dr.
God. So I'm a mother and a grandmother. I work for the Florida Department of Health in Palm Beach County. We have one of the best teams there, HIV program team there, and it's just awesome. I'm also the founder and CEO of Love Gardens Ministries International, which is a 501c non-for-profit organization that mentors, that educates, that coaches from a psychoeducational perspective. 30 years also living with HIV myself. Came from a CD4 of 2, which is back in those days, we don't use this term anymore, but back in those days we used full-blown AIDS, and today we no longer use that. But I came from an AIDS diagnosis to today, 30 years later, undetectable. My children are fine, my grandchildren are fine, and I'm so grateful for that. So I'm just grateful to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me. Melvin is a community hero for us. He's been in my life for a few years, right now, Melvin?
Yeah, yes.
And he has been, from the very moment I met him, he just touched my heart with his story and then invited me to share mine. So together we collaborated on this book. And Mr. Henry, I've had the pleasure of knowing you without you knowing I know you. So for many years, I've known you. I was in the West Side Gazette many years ago, and the cover article was Cinderella all over again. And that chronicled my life then, because I came from human trafficking, particularly sex trafficking. And that happened when I was 11 years old. And so the West Side Gazette picked up my story because I was taken from trafficking. The police got me and put me in DCF custody. DCF is the Department of Children and Families, which I refer to as the Department of Cracked Foundations, because children like me kept falling through the cracks, and they continue to do so in that system. That is very archaic and outdated, by the way, if I may say so. And then when I just fought for my life, fought for my sobriety, I was a victim of intimate partner violence, fell right into that crack cocaine era. So, you know, the war on drugs was really a war on us. And so I made it through all of that by the grace of God. And West Side Gazette picked up that story when I started to educate myself. And I became the alumni of the year in my nursing program. And that was through the beta program. And the West Side Gazette got with my professor at my nursing school and with Clay Shaw. So Clay Shaw was the congressman at that time. And that's how West Side Gazette got in contact with me. So I'm grateful, Mr. Henry, for you and for all you do in our community.
Wow. One never knows.
Oh, wow.
You didn't know that, Mr. Bill.
Wow.
You didn't know that, Mr. Bobby, did you?
You didn't know.
No, I didn't. No, not at all.
Wow.
Okay.
And here I am again with you.
Here we
So
are.
I'm honored.
We're honored. Let's do this. Ari, can
Truly
you
honored.
get
Wow.
a little clip of our next guest, please?
Is Yolanda Reed. I am a single mother of 2, and I am a person who is positively living with the virus.
I do have the pleasure of Denise Bell. I see we got some technical difficulties going on here. Nikki, as she's so affectionately called, is my daughter. And we have a very we have a very interesting story to tell, but we'll save that for another time. So if you can come on, Yolanda.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Daddy.
Oh, boy. Hey, Nikki. She's in
Okay,
Dallas in the upstate. And
I'm in Dallas. Hey, Melvin, welcome back from DC. I really want to hear about the trip and everything else. And oh, man, Dr. Anderson, you are my shiro. You are.
God bless you.
Mm-hmm.
God bless you.
So, Mr. Busby and Mr. Wright and Westside Gazette family, good evening.
good
My
evening.
dad.
Good evening.
So, Daddy, not everybody knows Nikki anymore.
Okay. Yolanda.
Nikki, thank you. Nikki was a bad, bad girl.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So, good evening, everybody. My name is Yolanda Bell. As Mr. Henry stated, I am his daughter. Um, our story is a pretty unique one, and it is one that I boldly and gladly discuss anywhere and everywhere that I go when HIV and AIDS is the topic of discussion. I'm a person who is positively living with HIV, and I have been living with the virus since 1987. I was diagnosed in 1989. So, diagnosed, I've been living with this virus for what, 36 years? 35, 36 years. Um, you know, I've seen a lot. I was listening to our host and co-host talk about this date 34 years ago when World AIDS Day was first commemorated. You know, I remember my mom telling me that, you know, promise me that no matter what, you'll never take that goddamn HIV medication. Um, that was back in 1989 when the only thing that we had was AZT. And AZT had us dropping like flies, had us dropping worse than the actual quote unquote full blown AIDS itself. Um, I remember so much. I remember the Philadelphia story um, with Tom Hanks being the first, that was the first first movie that I remember that talked about HIV and AIDS.
Let me ask you something, Nikki.
Yes, sir.
Yolanda.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, as this show implies in the title, warriors, uh, warriors of still in the struggle. Um,
Hmm.
how do you identify with that?
What do you mean? I am a warrior in the struggle. I'm an advocate. I'm an agitator. I'm an activist, whatever I need to be at any given time. Is that what you're asking me?
Exactly. So what
Okay.
are you doing now?
So currently I work for, oh, wow. Thank you, Daddy. Thank you. I work for this. Listen. I realized something today, y'all. We take for granted. I'm just going to say it like I took for granted Modco in South Florida. Well, here in Dallas, we have a similar. It's an organization founded by a Black gay man for the Black community, and it's all about equity with HIV and AIDS. Not only just the treatment, but the prevention as well. This man started this company back in 2005, and we are still doing the people's work. I get out there, I test, I recruit. Um, I advocate if someone needs someone to talk to, if a person is newly diagnosed, specifically Black women. If a Black woman is newly diagnosed and she's having some struggles, she has my number. She can call me. She can call other people on our staff. You know, we're there, Daddy. We are in the trenches. We are still fighting the fight because the war is nowhere near over.
We still got work to do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So that's what
You
I
know,
do.
I like to thank you so much for sharing that, Yolanda. I'd like to go back over to Dr. Anderson for a minute, just to help our audience just understand what HIV and AIDS is,
Absolutely.
and kind of where are we now?
First of all, I just want to give honor to this beautiful queen, Yolanda Bell. Thank you for sharing your advocacy, your heart. I feel your spirit through this screen, through this technology. I feel it, and it's beautiful, and I honor you. And I'm so grateful that you're here and that you're healthy and that you're well. I'm so grateful to God. So as I'm listening to you, I'm just so touched. So AIDS and HIV, this is something that we still grapple with in the Black community. And the reason we can't lean in to this is because of stigma. It's been typecast the same way it appeared almost 40 years ago. We still see it through that
Mm-hmm.
lens. And that is
Yes.
a huge problem. Even today, while we
Mm-hmm.
were testing on 45th Street, I work for the Florida Department of Health. I am the minority AIDS coordinator there. And as I'm doing counseling and testing, this woman walked up after I came outside of the examination room, and she says, "What is all of this about?" Because we give out incentives and we educate and we talk and we want to get to know you, because I'm not just a tester. You mentioned it, Mr. Henry. We're warriors, especially when we're living with this. We have a kinship, not only with those who are also impacted with HIV, living with HIV, but we also have a great responsibility to keep those people that are negative, to keep them negative. And
Yes.
I have this dual role that I play. HIV is
Yes.
a virus, okay? It's a virus. AIDS is the advanced stages. When we don't take care of our bodies, when we're not taking our antiretroviral medication. I've been on antiretroviral medication for 30 years. When I was first diagnosed with HIV, it was somewhat of a mystery. It wasn't a mystery because science and clinicians and practitioners didn't know anything about HIV. No, it was a mystery because when I was having these symptoms of Kaposi sarcoma, you could look at me and tell that I was sick. Swollen lymph nodes. I had a huge ulcer under my left rib cage, and it was open. That's how bad it was. And I was going to the doctor, believe it or not. I was going to the doctor when it first came that I was feeling fatigued and I wasn't feeling well. And they said, we tested you. We did a complete blood check and we can't find anything wrong. We think you're stressed. I was working 2
Oh
jobs,
my God.
my children. They sent me home. Second diagnosed. I came back into the hospital because I felt lightning. It was like I was being struck by lightning internally. And I can't explain it better than that. So I went back to the hospital and they put me on an EKG machine at Westside Regional on Broward Boulevard. And they said to me, "Well, you know what, miss? We don't know what's wrong. We think you're overstressed. It may be chronic fatigue, and your EKG is off the chart." The third and final diagnosis came about a month later. I was getting sicker. The Kaposi sarcoma, which by the way is a skin cancer that's very rare, similar to leprosy. It just spread just worse over my body. And the third and final diagnosis came when they sent me to a dermatologist, not for my my complete blood check, but because of the skin lesions. They say you need to go to a dermatologist. Not to belabor this point, it was a female dermatologist that says they took a plug out of my neck, and it was it hurt. It was almost like I was a guinea pig, if you will. It hurt so bad because she didn't even give me anesthesia before taking a big chunk of my skin out to biopsy it, and still it didn't expose the problem. Finally, she said, you need to go to an infectious disease doctor. We think that's the last thing it is. And because I wasn't white, because I wasn't a male, I was put on the back end of getting an HIV test. Well, we know today that's not the case, because we know that it's a human virus, not a gay virus, not a Haitian virus, not something that attacks hemophiliacs, because remember, they were getting blood transfusion if you had hemophilia back in those days. It's a human issue. And until we understand that, and until we understand that it's no longer that, if I was the only one 30 years with HIV living now, 0 transmissions in my 30 years, if I was the only one, HIV would be over. It would be a non-issue. We would be talking about high blood pressure, diabetes, and other social determinants of health that disproportionately impacts the African American community. But we're still talking about HIV after 40 years in the Black community, because unfortunately, we are impacted by every social determinant of health because of historic trauma, because of the vestiges of slavery that continues to be with us today, okay, from racial biases in the medical profession to housing to every, and I know we can go on and on about that, but I'll just say this. I'm so grateful for my doctor, Alberto Mestri, because when I finally received that HIV test, and back in those days, it took 2 weeks to come back. Now we'll know in 60 seconds. 60 seconds. And even though you may be non-reactive, we still may need you to come back, especially if it was an acute infection, or acute just meaning it was something happened last night or last week or even last month. You need to continually come back and be retested. But my doctor, after 2 weeks of waiting for that test, he brought me in with compassion, with kindness. He actually put down my folder to speak to me eye to eye, face to face, and he touched my hand. And that shocked me, because here is a Caucasian male who put down my file and touched my hand and said, we're going to get through this together. And for that reason, I honor him in my autobiography, Lessons from the Thorns, because he gave me such compassion and kindness. And for the next few years, I came from a CD4 of 2, which, by the way, is no immunity, to where I am today, which is undetectable and have been so for many years.
Okay. Wow. Melvin, your mantra, your motto, your saying, we're in this together.
We are in this fight together.
Hmm?
We are in this fight together.
Yeah. Give us a little your role in what you're doing as a warrior in this battle. What are some of the things that you're doing?
Well, what I'm doing in this battle, that I started a Speak Out Club 6 years ago. It's been 6 years now since I have a Speak Out Club in Deerfield Beach High School. What I'm doing, I'm bringing in people like Miss Sandra herself, that people that living with the virus tell their story to the kids. Then I bring in somebody like you that infected with a daughter that have the virus and tell his side of the story. And me tell my story for my 4 family members that I lost. You get it, Mr. Henry?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're doing more than that. I remember not only
my tag I got my HIV tag. I, I do a lot, Mr. Henry. I got my HIV ministry at my church where I have a program that Dr. Sandra is she my guest speaker. Mr. Bobby Henry, are you still coming?
Yeah, yeah. That's December That's on my calendar. I think it's December 10th. Is it the
Yeah,
10th?
December 10th at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, I
You don't
remember
want
Mel.
to miss it.
I know, I know. And this. Okay, here we had COVID to come in and kind of just swallowed up or shadowed. So how is or how did or how is the COVID situation um, affecting the knowledge of or um, HIV and AIDS? Yeah. How are those two handling each other's situation? I would ask Yolanda. And let me say this before you say anything. I do know that again, Dr. Anderson and Yolanda recuperating. She was off work today, feeling real bad, and Dr. Anderson is working on her dissertation. So we know our time is limited with you two, but we really want to stress the the need for warriors. It's not over with.
No, it's not over.
No.
One of the questions is how
We
we're
still
battling.
got work to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the questions is we're still battling out here, and with all these other diseases, as we talk about COVID, it can add additional stress on those that are positive. But is there any treatment or concerns that people with HIV should have in this COVID environment?
Dr. Anderson, I'm going to let you answer that question.
Absolutely. So COVID presented very deleterious impacts, especially in Black and Brown communities. We now know, according to research and literature, that African American communities and when I say Black and Brown or say African American, just know that I'm speaking of the entire demographic have been more impacted. Why? Because we're already living with unresolved grief and trauma that leads to an avalanche of other diseases, heart disease, diabetes, blood pressure, lupus, and on and on. So until you resolve what's already underlying, then it compiles because stress is cumulative. And a lot of our issues are either misdiagnosed, undiagnosed, and mistreated because of the lack of knowledge and the lack of competency when it comes to practitioners in our communities. So, how many of you have a doctor that is African American? How many of you have a dentist that's African American? And even and African American doesn't mean kinship, because unless they understand or are attuned to the Black experience, then you're just dealing with someone who is just going along to get along, for the lack of other words. So when the COVID happened, I can tell you this: we lost quite a few people because of pre-existing conditions. Remember, COVID was more impacting people with pre-existing conditions, untreated or mismanaged diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity. I started many years ago doing nutrition because our nutrition, just like our behavior, like our finances, like our families, like our parenting styles, are out of control. Out of control. Dysfunction in our communities are out of control. This gives our children more attention
Yes.
than we do. So who's telling the children to go brush their teeth? Who's making sure they're brushing and flossing? Who's making sure they're bathing and washing behind their ears? Who's making sure that they're eating right and not just the junk food? They're almost left to themselves, even in a home with adult caregivers present. And I know it sounds like I'm scattering, but I'm going to bring it back to COVID. So when you're dealing with all of these other issues in our communities, then when this global pandemic came on the scene, It's like the Jenga game. And I'm going to not talk in clinical terms. I want to talk in terms that everyone understands what I'm saying, including those who are listening to us. If you've ever played a game called Jenga, it's pieces that you put on top of each other. Who knows who loses the game? Who can tell me who loses the Jenga game?
The person who makes it topple all the way down.
Thank you so much, Mr. Perry. It's the person that makes it topple, and they're out, and then you play again until the next person makes them all topple. The thing is, you don't know when they're going to topple, right? Because they're just build, and stress is cumulative, which means the things that happen to us in childhood, they're not over because we're older. So if I was raped at 7, if I was mistreated at 4, if I didn't have my father in the household and I grew up without him, that's a block on top of a block on top of a block. And then when you add the other issues that we go through in life, relationship issues, health issues, educational, and on, those are extra blocks. Now here comes COVID at the top. COVID caused a lot of our towers to tumble because we haven't been managing our life, managing our emotions, managing our stress, managing how much we're sleeping. Sleep deprivation is huge in our communities, okay? And I'm not saying this to cast stones. I'm saying this to show the reality of what's happening, because Hosea 4 and 6 says we perish from the lack of knowledge. So why did COVID-19 come in and impact our communities disproportionately? Because we were already dealing with historical trauma, the vestiges of slavery, and all the other things that fits into that matrix. And today, we're still dealing with it because of the lack of redress and reparation in our communities. And I can go on and on about that, but I'll pull back and let someone else talk.
Yeah, because I know you could have gone on.
I was looking at some information. In its onset in earlier days, again, we know that it was HIV and AIDS attributed to gay white men. Now, I read somewhere that the age is dropping down, 13 to 24, and those that are greatly or much that are greatly affected more are now men having sex with men, black men. So how do we address or attack that from? How do we deal with that? I mean, help me out here now.
You talking about the 13 to the 24 age?
Yep.
I think it should start educating in the school like a speak out club like I have. We need more speak out clubs so we can educate the kids. So, cause the kids, they gonna tell somebody, and the word gonna spread. It's just like a chain. They're gonna this is what we had in the speak out club. This is what we did. This is what we talk about. Kids talk.
Yeah.
They do.
Also, how do we address? And it's not just the Black community. I think it's all communities.
Yes.
When you have, I don't know. I won't even say it's a phenomenon. Just a shift. And men having sex with men is not a new thing. No. But it is seen as a shift because it is more mainstream now. How do we get a community to understand that rather than demonize it, we just have to work with it, because men having men aren't going to stop. We just want them to have better sense and better judgment if that's what they engage in. Is that correct?
Mr. Perry, that's absolutely correct. It's funny that you asked that particular question. the fact that the age groups for new infections, for the increase in new infections is in that particular age group. A few years ago, it was the I think it was the age group right above them, if I'm not mistaken. The face used to be, it looked like a gay white man. It's evolved to a black woman, and now it's going back. Now it's going to our black and brown MSMs. And it's not just the MSMs. It's also, we can't forget about our transgender family as well. And that's a whole nother topic. But we work. That's our community as well. I believe that we just have to continue educating.
Yes.
That's the, and it's not just, not taking anything away from what you said, Melvin, because you are absolutely right. When we have educated educators who are educating our children, and that's the key, because what I found out, believe it or not, in the medical field, there are some doctors who don't know what PrEP is. So if there's a doctor that doesn't know what PrEP is, how, or can't explain to me why I should get on, why can't explain to my son why he should get on PrEP. What makes me think that someone who's, that our kids are getting that? We cannot just depend completely on the schools to educate our children in that area. I'm sorry, those days are long gone. I said that I raised 2 sons and I didn't have candy dishes in my house. I had condom dishes. I let them know when they were in elementary school what it meant to have a mother who was living with HIV, what it meant for me as their mom, what it meant for them as my children. So education, hey, and I don't know if our listeners know this or not, but anyone who is 13 years of age and up can get an HIV test done without their parents' consent.
Good.
I remember we were at a I'm sorry, I'm going to say this and I'm going to be quiet. We were at a health fair, and it was in South Dallas over at College Fair Park. So there was a lot. It was geared towards high school age girls, young adults. And this young lady was walking by with, I want to say it was her grandmother, and the grandmother, the conversation that she was having with my director regarding sex, when the young lady was trying to ask questions, this grandmother was just shutting the young lady down. And I understand that there may be some type of fear that, if we give them too much information, or if we provide them with condoms, they're going to have sex. No, if I provide my child with condoms, I believe that they're having sex, I want them to have it safely. And the little girl was embarrassed. So while my director had her grandmother off to the side, I was able to take this young lady around the corner and have an open conversation.
Mm.
I learned a new term that day. It's sexual naivete. The baby was a virgin, but she had questions. And so if our kids can't come to us when they have these questions and we can't educate them, where are they going to go get the education from? Is it A, going to be correct? And is it B, is it going to lead to down an even darker path? Intimate partner violence, trafficking, HIV, unwanted pregnancy, suicide. Okay, I'm done.
So how do we create this army of warriors that's needed not only in this where we're talking about HIV, so I'll keep it there. So how do we create uh, the army that we need?
So if I could just add to what you said earlier, or the question you had about MSM, Mr. Henry. So the issue with MSM, or men who have sex with men, also we refer to that as same gender loving men. It's more complex. Um, and these issues are just more complex than just condoms, just PrEP, just education. Because we live in a society now that wants to give a pill for everything and not change lifestyle. So if you give me a pill for weight loss, but you haven't taught me how to exercise and eat right, then
Yep.
that's not going to
Hmm.
last. Give me a pill for depression or anxiety or any type of somatization that I may be experiencing, but not teach me how to self-regulate, how to self-control, and how my brain is working or not, then
Hmm.
I'm just making the drug companies a little bit richer. When it comes to HIV and HIV incidents, it's not so much about gender. Yes, um, sexuality is a culture because some certain cultures we want to be wine, we want to be dined, we want a relationship. Other cultures we want to hook up. We're over sexualized in our country and in our culture. We know that the music all but hijacks our neurological pathways and it makes us kind of piper right into where we what the lyrics are saying. We don't realize that, but that's actually what's happening neurologically. When it comes to HIV incidents, yes, the ages are 13 to 24. That is moving as well, and it's becoming older as well because there are these misnomers that because I'm older, I can't get HIV. You see, so people perish from
Hmm.
knowledge again. Hosea 4:6. However, it's not just education and knowledge. The Speak Out Club is wonderful. Melvin runs that. I've spoken at that. We've actually expanded that to Boynton Beach, to South Transition. So we're expanding his Speak Out Club, which I commend him at that. Also, I run a psychosocial, psychoeducational work group throughout throughout the state called ROAR, Raising Ongoing Adherence and Resilience. We don't have to say anything about HIV in that. But what I do need to show you is EQ, which is emotional intelligence, because that's what we're lacking. I can have condoms and not use those condoms, male or female,
Hmm.
and become infected with HIV. Because, hey, maybe I want to feel you tonight. Maybe I want to become one and have all of you tonight. Emotional balance matters. Emotional mastery matters. But I cannot
Hmm.
master my emotions, self regulate myself, control myself until I understand what's going on beneath. And when I look behind you, Mr. Wright and Mr. Henry, I see deeply rooted, pardon me, and that speaks volumes to me because these issues are deeply rooted, okay? Not just in our culture, not just in our families, but they're deeply rooted neurologically because we
Hmm.
become the imprint. What makes a person, whether they're MSM or not, whether they're same gender loving or not, right? Whether they're bisexual, whatever it is, transgender, doesn't matter. HIV has a few ways it's transmitted: blood, vaginal fluid, anal mucus, semen, breast milk. Okay. So all the other variables, that's what I focus on. And then my next focus is on this. Why would you, let me ask you this. I'm going to ask this question to Mr. Perry.
Hmm.
Why would you ever, you or anyone you know and love, put yourself at risk for HIV? And I'll just let you answer that and then I'll explain my next point.
Why would I put myself at risk for
Yes,
HIV?
yes, sir.
I guess I'm not understanding. Because I wouldn't put
Why,
myself at risk for
why wouldn't
HIV.
you? Please just humor me. Why wouldn't you? I'm getting to a point, a deeper.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because I want to be my healthier self to be here for the ones I love.
So if I'm understanding you right, Mr. Perry, you want to be your healthier self. You want to be here for the one you love. Therefore, you would never put yourself at risk for HIV. Am I hearing that correctly?
Not knowingly put myself at risk. Yeah.
Or any other sexually transmitted infection, by the way, because
No, right, or anything, right.
we talked about PrEP, but PrEP does not protect you from syphilis, gonorrhea, and the other
No,
sexually transmitted infections that are out there. Okay, I asked you that for this reason. Why would anyone? We have commercials, we have advocacy in every county about HIV. Why would you, me, or anyone else put themselves at risk for HIV? Let me answer that. When I was a child, I was sexually abused at the age of 7. I didn't know what that meant or the implications for that.
Right.
But I knew that trauma was going to lead me to not feel worthy, to not feel worth protecting, because no one protected me from what my stepfather did to me. That led me to running away at 11. That led me to being trafficked. That led me to addiction and suicidal ideation. That crack cocaine addiction that I went through as a 16-year-old led me to acting out and further putting me at risk for HIV and every other issue. You see where I'm going with this? Why would I put myself at risk? Would I do that now? Absolutely not, because I'm healed and because I went through therapy and I resolved that trauma that happened to me at 7, at 11, and all the things that happened in between. We're dealing with the complexity of grief and trauma. And when we don't heal our grief and trauma, and here's my point, and then I'll pull back, we have what's called STIRBs. And that's what leads to HIV infection. Let me explain. STIRBs are short-term energy relieving behaviors. Why do I need to relieve energy, pray tell? It's because I don't have the coping mechanism in me. I haven't learned it. I haven't learned how to self-regulate. I haven't had a good experience with my emotions. And when we don't have a good relationship with our emotions, especially men go from aggressive anger to silence. We don't know how to cry. We've been socialized to be tough, to man up, not to cry, not to feel. But then you deny yourself being human if you can't cry, if you can't feel, if you can't be fully human. And in doing that, you act out of your STIRBs. So what are short-term energy relieving behaviors? Sex, drinking, shopping, smoking, eating, and there's about 20 more. But what I'm saying is, if I don't know that I'm eating to excess and I'm eating myself up to 600 pounds because there's something going on inside of me that I can't satiate. If I'm going out and acting out sexually, I don't understand that there's a neurological imprint that happened to me probably before the age of language, almost like if you pour wet cement, if Mr. Henry poured wet cement right now for a new sidewalk at his home, and somebody comes along and step in it before it's dry, it's going to leave what's called an imprint of that footprint, will it not?
It will.
Even after it hardens and dries, will that footprint still be in that cement? Until Mr. Henry decides to fix it. That's what it looks like. No one wants to get HIV. No one wants to get syphilis. No one wants to get gonorrhea. No one wants to put themselves at risk for anything. We're dealing with deep neurological and psychological issues. And until we understand that and do our counseling work, until I did, because even after I was on my medication, even after I was virologically suppressed, I was still dealing with unresolved anger. I was still dealing with triggers that came from a past that I never resolved. And so I had to go to counseling. And it's the best thing that happened to me.
You know, Doctor, I really appreciate you sharing with this. You were really hitting on all cylinders, especially when you talk about the emotional intelligence. when we talk about the healing, we have to take it personal. We have to look at it individually as well as socially within our community, because we see where the need is, where the most healing is needed. And even with the speak out groups, the clubs, that's a start. Some of them go deeper, and they get into the emotional intelligence and helping us go deeper into understanding or resolving these built up, pent up issues that we have within us, those childhood traumas that we blocked and forgotten. So when we talk about HIV and the impact in our community, if the community is broken or individuals within the community have no way of releasing, it's going to impact us in a more horrific way. And I think the conversation obviously has to continue.
Yeah.
Because this is just the tip of the iceberg. When we look at so many of the social ills, all of it stems from a lot of the trauma that we've experienced as people.
That's so true. Now hold it right there before we get into anything else. We're at the end of our time. So if we could just right now, if we can wrap this session up.
Okay.
Month. So we got a whole month that we can dialogue on these issues from a mental health standpoint, all the way to a physical standpoint. So we need to do this. If we can go around and please adhere to the time, because our producer is looking at us, over the rim of his glasses. So if we could spend 30 seconds or 45 seconds each offering a sense of hope to this fight, this battle that we're in. We could just 45 seconds to give us some hope. And then we'll start with you first, as you're the male host, panel.
Go ahead.
Who you waiting on?
Who you talking? Oh, you talking to me? The hope?
Yeah. Yes, you're talking to you, Mel. Give us 45. Give us some hope.
The hope is, I feel the hope is still educating the kids. That's the hope. And we got to educate more and teach the churches. Get the church involved. That is the bigger problem, the churches.
Okay, Miss Bell.
I'm riding on Melvin's coattails. No, seriously, hope. A great man said a long time ago, HIV and AIDS, that it's not an alone disease. It is not, and thank God that AIDS is no longer a death sentence. Again, Dr. Anderson, like you are just, oh my gosh. I really need your contact information. I would really like to connect with you after this program. You're just amazing. I want to thank each and every one of you all for extending the invitation to me. I was just sitting back. I really just wanted to listen and absorb more than I participated this time. And I do apologize for the technical difficulties, but the hope is if we can do it, so can you.
Dr. Anderson?
The Bible says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Melvin is hope. Miss Bell, you're hope. Mr. Perry, you're here. Mr. David and Mr. Henry. This is hope, because this is how we overcome all of this. We overcome by the blood of the Lamb, Christ in us, the hope of glory, and then the word of our testimony. And each and every one of us have a testimony. And when I broke the silence over my life, I was able to help others. I was useful for the kingdom to help other people self-actualize, heal, and become the best version of themselves first, by setting them free from their grief and trauma and helping them to be aware of how they were traumatized, either in childhood or young adolescence, in that attachment. And then we know the best is yet to come when you do your healing work.
Mr. Wright?
Well, I gotta say that one. Absolutely. I do believe the hope is in all of us, and we have to show ourselves as ambassadors, leaders, fighters in this cause. And again, it starts with us. We have to be those individuals that don't mind putting the work in, helping ourselves first so we can help others.
Mr. Busby?
First of all, thank all of you, our guests, Ms. Bell, Mr. Wright, Dr. Anderson, for really enlightening us and bringing this back to the forefront. In fact, I have a personal story that I didn't go into detail about, but again, in terms of hope. As Dr. Anderson said, we're all here, and I don't think that we're all here by accident. And then I remember a guy telling me one time, long before people give to causes, they give to people. Uh, and you all made this real again for me. And so I'm hopeful to contribute in terms of my abilities and my talents, because this really hits close, and I think, like so many of us, we fight to get past things, but getting past shouldn't be forgetting. And so that's what we have to struggle with, in terms of continuing struggles and forgetting that which is behind us that still needs, our input and help from time to time. So thank all of you. And again, Bobby and Brother David, thank you guys for helping to pull this together. And I'm just happy you're a part of it. Thanks.
Ari, can you do something? Can you play a little bit of that video? And this video, I got tested at a black newspaper convention, NPA convention, with over 500 people there, and I did that because of my daughter. So this clip is just a little bit of it, and then I'm gonna read something that we're all gonna participate in at the end. So, Ari, can you put a little bit of that video, please?
Bobby R. Henry Sr., publisher of the West Side Gazette out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. First of all, it's a personal issue with me.
Okay,
I have a family member. My daughter is HIV positive. Yeah, she's been for over 20 years, I would say. This was during the summer, I think it was July, and she called me on the phone, and she said, "Dad, I got something to tell you." And I said, "What is it? I know you told me you were going into the Air Force, so what is it that you?" And she said, "I got a letter from the Air Force, and it was from the medical people, and they told me that I needed to get checked again because I'm showing that I'm HIV positive." So, it shocked me first. I was totally blown away. This was my little girl,
Had to be hard.
Especially when you wasn't there. But you can't blame yourself.
But wait a minute, hold on. You're being there. You weren't going to be with her 24 hours.
Right.
So is that some guilt you put on yourself?
You question yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, what I want to do, I'm reading this from the book, Life at the End of the Tunnel. This is a very good book, and it was written Dr. Anderson and Melvin. In this book, it's called A Moment of Silence and Reflection. Now, listen closely and do what it asks us to do. And it says, this moment of silence and reflection remembers all who have gone before us in the fight to end HIV and AIDS. First, say the name of the person coming to your mind right now. Levi Henry. Remember Remember the smile and the laughter. Remember the essence of all they were. Remember their dreams and ambitions. We will never forget that we have come this far because they were here. Today, the spirit of ending HIV epidemic reminds every person living with HIV that we are almost there. We unite with strength, dignity, and resilience to end HIV-related discrimination and stigma. Together, we bring down the giants of stigma, hate, and ignorance. These formidable diseases separate us from understanding our humanity. We are one people, one race, the human race. May we begin to truly see that we are all the color of tears, the sound of laughter, and the hope of love for all people around the world. So let us not forget that HIV and AIDS is not an age-long disease. Thank you so very much. For remembering and caring enough to make a difference. God bless you.